Jaguar, Chapter 19, page 196. 2 days passed and still no sign of Doc and Raoul. Flana and I were very worried about them. Silver said that our anxiety was a result of our knowing that we weren't alone. I'm sure this was part of it, at least for me. I'd look around at the thick forest cover and wonder if someone was watching us. What did he think of us? Had he left another gift on the rock? Was he wondering why I hadn't taken it and left something in exchange? I had to stop myself from checking the rock a dozen times a day. The other part of our anxiety was Doc's run-down condition when he left camp. He had said that they would be back in a few days. In Doc's warped sense of time, this could mean anything from 2 weeks to several weeks. The only thing that brought us comfort was the fact that Raoul was with him, so we waited. Silver stayed close to camp, but he didn't talk to us much. I carried the shotgun when he was around, but stashed it away when I was with Flana because I knew it made her uncomfortable. I continued to make my telemetry flights. Wild Bill and Tall had moved, but they were still east of the lake. Beth had stayed within 5-mile radius west of the lake. The hunting must have been good there. When I wasn't flying, I helped Flana in the canopy. She was serious about leaving as soon as Doc got back. We had taken down most of her web, leaving only 2 research platforms. We talked a lot about what happened to Brazil's indigenous peoples. Millions had been killed over the years, entire tribes wiped out by rainforest exploitation. She said most effective means of getting rid of them had been to go into their villages and cough on them. For them, a flu virus or measles can be as bad as the bubonic plague or AIDS, she told me. The disease of civilization are the same bullets that killed hundreds and thousands of North American Indians. Down here, those that survived the diseases are contaminated by Western civilization. They work in the mines and oil fields for a few pennies a day with the privilege of living in total squalor. On the morning of the 3rd day, Doc returned. Flana and I were up in the canopy. I was lying face down on one of those observation platforms looking through the foliage when I caught a slight movement on the ground below. I found binoculars and shifted over to the right of the platform so I have a clearer view. All I could see was a pair of muddy boots laying on the ground. The wind moved the branch I was trying to see around. I got a glimpse of the pair of torn Levi blue jeans. "It's Doc!" I yelled, scrambled for my rope. By the time I reached the ground, Flana was already there and out of her harness. She was cradling Doc's head in her lap. His eyes were closed and his lips were swollen and cracked. He was having trouble breathing. "We have to get him back to camp," Flana said. "He's burning up." I ran. When I got back to camp, I yelled for Silver, but he didn't answer. I didn't wait around to find out why. I grabbed the Jaguar stretcher and ran back to the forest. Flana thought Doc had malaria, but she wasn't certain. She said it wasn't the first time, which was news to me. "It could be a flare-up," she said. Stress can bring it out again. Or else he hasn't been taking his anti-malaria pills and he's been infected. That wouldn't surprise me. Whatever he had was very serious. We put him on a cot in his tent. He had a raging fever and was nearly comatose. Flana dribbled water in his mouth and sponged him down, trying to cool him off. She force-fed him a huge dose of anti-malaria pills. "This won't work unless it's malaria," she said. "I guess all we can do is try to keep him comfortable and hope the fever breaks." I wandered in and out of the tent all afternoon and evening, bringing water from the lake to cool Doc down. We hadn't seen Silver all day. He couldn't have picked a worse time to go out on one of his strolls. That night, I came back from the lake with yet another load of water. When I got into the tent, Flana was in tears. "I don't know what to do, Jake. I think he's getting worse." The man lying on the cot did not look like my father. In the dim lantern light, he looked like a ghost of Robert Lanza. It took all of my strength to hold back my own tears. My own father couldn't die like this. Flana wiped her tears away. "No sign of Silver yet?" I shook my head. "I thought he'd be back by evening, but he hasn't shown up yet. Nor had Raoul. What happened to them out there? Raoul wouldn't leave Doc like this." "There's nothing we can do for him here," Flana said. "He needs medical attention. We have to get him to a doctor." "How?" "The boat," she said. "What about Silver and Raoul?" will come back for them. A trip down the tunnel right now will probably kill Doc. Who will pilot the boat, I asked. I don't know how to do it. If we ran aground in the tunnel, all of us would die, including Silver and Raoul. That boat's our only way out of here. You're right, she said, but we need to do something. I had never felt more hopeless. Do you want me to take over, I asked. She hadn't left Doc's side in 12 hours. No, I'm fine, she said. I just wish Silver would get back here. I'm sure he'll be back tonight or tomorrow morning, I said, but I wasn't all that certain. Something might have happened to him, too. I left the tent and walked down to the beach. I was hoping to see the light in Silver's boat, but it was dark and the Zodiac was still on the beach. The moon was full, and I could see the Tito clearly bobbing near the tunnel's entrance. I sat down and thought about ways to help my father. In the morning, I could try to find Silver, but where would I start looking? I couldn't track him the way Raoul could. Maybe the tribe could help us, I thought. They might know what Doc's problem is. Then again, they might be responsible for his problem and Raoul's disappearance. I began to wonder if there really was an uncontacted tribe. Raoul wasn't with Doc, which meant that he could have left the Golden Jaguar. That still didn't explain where he'd gotten the figurine. I glanced over the rock. I could see it clearly in the moonlight. What if there was another gift up there? Perhaps it would explain what's going on. What would be the harm in just looking? I climbed up to the rock and turned my flashlight on. In the beam was a rusty pair of eyeglasses. I picked up the frames. The lenses were missing. Raoul didn't wear glasses, nor did anyone else in our group, and I doubted that the tribe had an optometrist living with it. Where would they get a pair of glasses? I was even more confused. I looked across the lake. The full moon reflected off the surface. I was reminded of something I had read when I was in Poughkeepsie. I ran over to the Zodiac, started it up, and sped across the lake to Silver's boat. His cabin was unlocked. I went inside and switched on the light and found a book I was looking for. It took me a while to find the right page. A river running through the forest beside the city fell over a big fall, whose roar could be heard for leagues, and below the fall the river seemed to widen out into a great lake, emptying itself. They had no notion where. The tunnel, I thought. The lake wasn't great, and the waterfall couldn't be heard for leagues. But who knows what kind of changes had taken place here since 1753 was when this description was written. The lake the book was talking about was supposed to be near the lost mines of Murebecca. I look over at Silver's desk and was surprised to see a radio collar lying on it. What was even more surprising was the transmitter had been cut away from the collar. Why would he do that? Sitting next to the collar was my box of gifts. I opened it. Inside was the Golden Jaguar, various feathers, the turtle skull, a blue stone, and the dried piranha jaw. And a new item, an old rusty compass. I picked it up and turned it over. There was an engraving on the back. It read Colonel P.H. Fawcett, 1924. I knew why Silver wanted to come up here. I took the Zodiac to shore. Before going in to check on Doc, I went up to the supply tent. One of the receivers and handheld antennas was missing. Silver had cut the radio collar transmitter off and left it on the rock as a gift. Right now, he was out in the forest tracking the Indian who had taken it, hoping it would lead him to the place where he had found the Golden Jaguar. Colonel Fawcett was a courageous man and a great explorer, but he was chasing after something that never existed. The fruitless search killed him, his son, and his son's friend. It's a tragedy that's as old as the rainforest. Silver had lied to me. He had lied to all of us. Flana was sitting in the chair next to Doc's cot asleep. I touched her on the shoulder and she woke up with a start. "Why don't you go into my tent and get some rest?" I whispered. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm wide awake," I said, which wasn't an exaggeration. "I'll be back soon. Just keep putting the cold compress on." "Is he any better?" "I don't know. He's been talking, but none of it makes sense. Delirious ramblings." I watched Doc all night. Every once in a while, he would start mumbling, as if he were having a nightmare. I couldn't understand what he was saying. About 2 in the morning, he sat straight up in bed and yelled, "Watch out, Beth! You're smarter than that!" I was so startled, I almost fell over backwards. As soon as he said it, he lay back down and didn't say another thing the rest of the night.